This is R2D-Tech and we're back with another video this week. This one's pretty exciting for me because we're going to be unboxing the Canon AE-1 Program film camera, and I guess it will actually be a re-unboxing since I already kind of opened it already. I couldn't wait. But then we'll also be taking a look at how to load the film into the camera, which I'll be trying out for the first time as well. Okay, so here's the box. I've cut the seal already and opened it up. And if we just remove some of this packaging, here we go. We've got the camera right there. Put that to one side. And the other thing in the box is the lens over here. And I think that's it in the box. I was actually expecting to get a camera strap with this as well, but it seems they forgot to put that in there. So here they are, the camera and the lens. One thing which actually surprised me quite nicely is that the lens cap on this one that they sent me is the Olympic version, which I thought was really cool actually. From what I understand, that means that there is actually no difference in terms of the camera body between the Olympic version and the non-Olympic version of the AE-1 Program. The only difference is the actual lens cap, but either way it's really nice, actually a really cool addition to the camera. So first thing I'm going to do before I do anything else is get rid of some of the dust on the lens just with a microfiber cloth, because it is a bit dusty probably from the packaging. We'll remove the lens cover. You can see what it looks like right there. The lens I got is the 50mm focal length f1.8, which seems to be the most common one that you get with this camera out of the box. But I would also like to probably experiment with, say, a 28mm, so a more wide lens in the future, and also maybe a zoom lens so I can get some photos of the moon specifically. So here's the camera. It's a very nice design in my opinion. You can see the mirror actually straight away in there, which it uses to reflect the light that comes in through the lens into the viewfinder so you can actually see what's going on. And then when you press the shutter button, which is over here, the mirror will lift up for as long as your shutter is going to be open for and expose the film, and then when it's done the mirror will come back down. Just to give you a very basic sort of tutorial, because I'm no expert myself, I do know though that to open the film door, which is quite an important thing to know how to do, you basically pull this circular thing up like that, and then you pull it up slightly more until the door pops open on the back like that. And then you can open the film door. You'll also be using this to rewind the film once it's done. But in order to rewind the film first, you would have to press the rewind button, which is on the bottom over here, this little black button. Obviously, you don't do that until you finish with the entire roll of film, otherwise it will be all messed up. Before we attempt to load any film for the first time in this camera, it is important that we put a battery in, which goes in a compartment on the front over here. This is the door for the battery compartment. Because this camera, the AE-1 Program, actually doesn't function without a battery. So it's not just the light meter that needs the battery on this camera. Everything really needs it to function, because the shutter button isn't fully mechanical. It actually uses an electromagnet system, which relies on the battery. I got this silver oxide 6.2 volt 4SR44 battery. Okay, so let's open the battery compartment. There is a very tiny little plastic lever in here, which is very difficult to show on camera, but I guess just take my word for it, which you push in and then it opens the camera door flap like that. Hopefully you can see that it quite clearly lays out where the positive and negative terminals are in red and blue, and also it tells you in there that it needs to be 6 volts as well. So let's put the battery in now. Obviously we want to be following the positive to positive and negative to negative, so we don't get any like short circuiting or anything like that. The battery just drops in like that quite easily, as you can see, and then you just close the cover to stop that from coming out, and that should be all done in terms of the battery loading. Okay, so now that the battery is in, it's important to test straight away whether the battery is actually providing the power to the camera that you want it to. And the easy way to do that on this camera is using actually the battery check button. So if you press this black button down, or if you hold it down, hopefully you can hear that beeping sound, which basically indicates that the camera is getting power. And I think their guideline is that if you get a lot of beeps, so at least 6 beeps within, I don't know, like the second, then you have got sufficient power. But if you're getting a very slow beep, like only 3 beeps in the entire second and quite spaced apart, then I think that indicates that your power, your voltage is quite low, so you do need to replace the battery. And if you're getting nothing, then clearly nothing's actually powering your camera, so something's wrong there and you probably need to consult a specialist about that. So since I don't actually have any film in here, I can actually play around with it a bit and show you guys the mechanism sort of working. So if I rewind by pulling this lever back like this, you'll hear that rewind sound, which is very nice. And you can tuck this away so it's not inconveniencing you. And then if you press the shutter, now that there's power to the camera, hopefully you heard that shutter sound, which is very, very nice indeed. And that basically means that everything's working. And I can actually show you that on the front. So if I rewind again, and if you look at the mirror in the actual front of the camera, you'll see it just opened and closed like that, which is accordance to the shutter speed that's set up here. Again, though, we won't go into much detail on that in this video. Another thing to note probably is if you look over here in front of the shutter speed dial, you'll be able to see that there's a bit of a counter which tells you how many exposures you've gone through on your film. And obviously, since I've been rewinding and shooting with no film in there, it's been counting up. One thing to note is that when you open the film door by doing what we did before with this lever over here, the actual counter returns to the 0 or like nominal state. The next thing I want to do is actually put the lens on. That's the next step. And I believe that the policy with this is that you want to align the red dot on the lens with the red dot on the top of the camera over here, which is just beneath the Canon logo. So if we do that, we want to be quite accurate with this as well. We just drop it on like that, and I believe you now turn it clockwise to put the lens on, and now it's locked on. And if you want to then remove the lens, there is actually a release button over here, which is this silver one. So you press that down and then you twist the lens anti-clockwise to take it off. So now let's actually get on to loading the film, which is going to be quite difficult since it's my first time doing this. But I've got the Kodak Ultra Max and I got 400 ISO. This one comes with 36 exposures per roll. You can pick it up. Around 3 rolls cost me £20, which isn't too bad. And the first thing you want to do before you start loading anything is you want to set the ISO onto the camera to the one that your film is. And that's done with this little green indicator over here, which is for ASA, which is the same thing as ISO. So on this camera, you push down this little silver button over here, and then there's a black lever or black little tab on the other side of this black ring, which allows you to then twist the actual dial onto the correct ISO. And then you can release the button, and once you've released this silver button, it's locked, and you want to hear that click that you might have just heard to indicate it's actually locked onto one of the ISO values. And now the good thing is that even if you twist this little black lever over here, it doesn't actually let you do that anymore because you're not holding the silver button down anymore. And that stops you from accidentally changing this once your film is in, if you throw your camera in your bag or something like that. So this is what the roll of film comes in, a little protective casing. And if we move the camera a bit back, a bit more room to work over here, you just open it up and take the film out. So you can see there's actually a bit of a slot over here for this bit that sticks out of the roll. So that goes down, and you place that in there like that. It sits quite nicely, and the first thing you want to do now is actually push this thing down, because that holds the roll in place now. And you want to make sure it's been pushed down all the way to the bottom, because sometimes it can be stuck a bit from the bottom, and if that's the case, then you want to twist it a bit while pushing down to make sure that it locks all the way in. And that's really important, because you'll see now as I twist the roll, this top bit also twists slightly to show that it's actually locked onto the roll properly. Now the next step, I believe, is that you pull the film across. You want to load it into the actual intake cylinder on this side, and you'll see it's quite obvious that it can fit into there. These slots on the film need to actually go onto these little ridges on this cylinder over here in order to be able to pull the film while you're using the winder. So it's important that that actually happens. So after you've loaded the film into one of the slots like this, you can then use the rewind to pull the film like that. So that pulls it sort of tight, but not perfectly. And you can see it's actually worked on this because the films come back around on this cylinder, and it's actually on the little ridges, or I think they're called sprockets, successfully over there. And you can also see they're successfully on the sprockets on this cylinder as well. Now, in order to rewind again, you do have to press the shutter button on this camera like that. And now it will let you rewind the camera. And the important thing to notice now when I'm rewinding, if you've done this correctly, is that as I rewind, this cylinder should turn, which it did, as you saw then, which means that the whole thing is properly locked in. So if this isn't turning, then it means it's not properly locked into the film cartridge, and this isn't actually going to be turning or pulling the film out. So if you're rewinding the film and this thing isn't turning, then that does mean that this isn't actually pulling the film out of the cartridge. So you could actually end up closing the door, taking lots of photos, and then realizing you weren't actually doing anything once you come to development, which would be really frustrating. So you definitely want to make sure that this is turning while you rewind. And you can always make sure of this, even when the door's closed, you can see if this is turning every time you rewind. It's a good check to do. So at this point, we can actually close the film door, move that out the way as such, and it clicks in. Make sure it clicks in, and now we'll rewind another time. We basically want to get the counter to number 1. Some people don't do this, but I think it's quite important just to make sure that you're not shooting on the exposed film. Press the shutter before you can rewind, and then rewind again. Note that this is still turning, which means everything's working correctly. And we're almost on number 1 on the counter. If you can see over here, it's between the S. I don't really know what the S stands for. All I know it's basically like the 0 value. But you do want to get to the 1 before you start actually using the camera for photography. So we'll fire again and rewind again, and we'll do it one more time. And now we're on the number 1, as you can see in the little view thing over there. Okay, so now I thought I'd give a few vague first impressions as to what it feels like to actually hold the camera, for example. Okay, so just holding the camera like this, like you normally would, I guess, it's actually quite a bit heftier than I thought. So I could definitely see myself getting quite tired if I had to hold this for a long period of time. But on the other hand, that makes it feel quite premium, because if it was really light and clearly plastic all the way around, then I wouldn't really enjoy it that much. Whereas on this, you can tell pretty much straight away that this is quite a solid block of metal right there. Yes, there is plastic, like all these black bits over here, but they definitely don't feel cheap, and just the overall weight makes it feel quite premium. Because of that weight though, I am noticing that when you do hold it in the shooting position like this, or like this for example, it would be nice to have something extra to grip onto. So at the moment, you've kind of just got the battery compartment over here as a mini grip to hold onto, but you can actually get a sort of finger grip extension which you can put on as well, which gives you a bit more to hold on to. And I think if you're going to be holding this for a long period of time or like shooting a lot, that could be quite useful. The other thing, of course, that would help with something like that is having a good camera strap. And unfortunately, this one didn't come with a camera strap. So I have ordered one and it's on its way, but I'll probably have to wait before I go out shooting because I don't think I could hold this all day without a camera strap. Of course, as well, when you actually combine the camera with the lens, it becomes a whole different piece because the lens is actually quite hefty all onto itself. That's definitely not a complaint though. I really like having this weight to a camera. It just makes it feel a lot more premium compared to those plasticky like point and shoots that you can get nowadays. One slight negative, which I definitely wouldn't class as a big deal at all, is that the rewind lever is a bit plasticky, and also the battery door compartment, while it's quite nice because it acts as a grip, this one is a bit plasticky and it does wiggle a bit, which is slightly worrying again. It could break fairly easily if you weren't being careful with it when opening it and stuff like that. But on the whole, it's a very sturdy camera. And if you do get that finger grip extension which goes on top of the battery compartment, it will protect it quite nicely. Other than that though, this thing is clearly quite a hefty, well-made product. You can hear there's no echo in there, it's just solid on the top, which I really like. And also being the program, it's got some nice features like the program mode and all of these connectors on the bottom so you can have an automatic rewind if you want to add that on. I don't really think I'm going to do that, but it's nice to have extra features like that. But yeah, I'm not really going to go into any more detail than this in this video in terms of features and stuff like that, or how to use the camera, you know, take good photos. That could follow in future videos if you guys are interested. This was just a bit of a general unboxing, loading the film, that sort of thing. I hope you enjoyed the video. Clearly, I'm quite excited to go out and start shooting with this thing and this really nice lens over here. If you did like the video, then please leave a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this in the future, then definitely subscribe and turn on the notification bell below. And finally, if you do want more videos on photography when I actually start doing it, and if I get any good, then let me know in the comments section below.